everybody, this is Pat and Heidi from Rain Country Homestead.
God is good all the time.
And today we wanted to just give you guys some updates on what we've been doing. Mostly we've been waiting on weather. We'll have a little bit of a cold snap and a little bit of wind that might come through here, and that really helps to dry out the ground around here to where we can stomp around here without disappearing. We call it quick mud around here instead of quicksand.
Yeah.
The front yard, as you guys know, we've been turning into a mini orchard and expanding our garden space a little bit to maximize our 3rd acre that we live on. We finished removing the cedar stump and removed the ash tree and took that debris away, backfilled the holes, leveled that out, and so far we've planted...
You took out the birch tree, the birch stump.
Yeah, and I removed the birch stump out of the southwest corner of the property. And we replanted our apple tree out there that had been planted in a pot on the deck for 5 years.
I think maybe as much as 5, 4 or 5.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years, and it's been giving us a few apples and begging us.
Good apples.
Yeah, really good apples, and it's been begging us for the last few years to be repotted, or at least put in the ground somewhere. So this year we've honored its request and we've planted it out there in the ground. So it should do very well out there. If I took it out of if you guys watch that video, I removed it from the half-rotten cedar pot that it was in, and the whole root ball and everything was froze solid. So actually that was kind of a blessing in disguise, because I didn't disrupt the root ball at all, basically planting it in its new home. And so that worked out pretty well. We destroyed a pot.
Yeah, it was...
But it was on its way out the door anyway.
Yeah, because all those wooden pots are starting, have either are beyond the point of rot and falling apart, or they almost are. I mean, that's just the way it is in rain country. Stuff that's wooden, and if it's not treated, it rots in a few years.
Well, so we used the pot to its maximum potential, and the tree had grown to its maximum potential. So now we have to go ahead and get that guy repotted and put it in his new home. So we got that done. So the next tree was our neighbor. He has a plum tree in his backyard, and he gave us a couple of starts off of that. And one of the starts last year had produced
about 24 plums.
About 24
plums. 2 dozen plums.
I was thinking a dozen. She says 2 dozen. So
yeah, it was a lot.
We got quite a few little plums off of there. And he gave us 2 5-gallon bucket full of plums. And
yeah, we ended up with a lot of plums.
I don't know why we're putting in a plum tree, but he might not be there next year. He might move. So we took that and took it from its pot and put it in the ground out front, so it can complement our little orchard that we're putting together out there. And the 3rd little tree so far is replanting the mini peach tree that I'd gotten from my dad
a few years
back. I think it might have been as much as 4 or 5 years ago as well. And we had planted it in the greenhouse thinking that would be the perfect environment for it. A peach tree.
It's a dwarf.
It's a dwarf tree, and we were thinking of planting it in there because it would extend a growing season for it. Well, it doesn't do terrifically well in there.
Yeah, it puts out a lot of peaches, but they don't really ripen well.
Right. The problem with that is having it planted in the greenhouse, it limits our space for peppers and tomatoes and cucumbers and melons and the things that we want to grow in the greenhouse. It's getting to the point where it's getting too big. It grows great. It puts on, we probably had a couple of dozen peaches on that little guy, but the shading from all of the other vegetation that we grow in the greenhouse actually, I think, it kind of inhibits it a little bit. So we went ahead and set that out in the front yard in a place where we think it's going to get maximum light. We're going to try to keep all of our trees out in the front yard at a manageable level so the light can still penetrate and get the garden next to the house in between the trees and the house. So we got that set out, and we're patiently waiting for our
black gold cherry tree.
Our black gold cherry tree. And so it's got to come in.
Yeah.
So we're going to set that out in between the plum and the existing older peach that we have.
So right now we currently have planted in the front yard 3 fruit trees with for sure 1 more to go in, and possibly a couple more. We're thinking about maybe squeezing a couple more in there if we zigzag them. And then we have the apple tree, the other apple tree, the one we just planted in the side yard alongside the bigger apple tree. So that'll give us for sure 7 fruit trees, maybe 9 out there if we do squeeze in a couple more. Plus we still have another plum tree in a pot back here.
Well, we might just go ahead and find somebody to give that one to.
Yeah, because
we don't need to.
We don't need to.
It's a self-pollinating plum.
Yep,
yeah.
And as many plums as our neighbor gets on his, I'm like, we don't need 2 of these.
So we'll have some cleanup to do out there, some straightening up. The side yard that now has the 2 apple trees, I need to go ahead and clean that up a little bit more. That's usually the place where I dump my firewood and kind of process it up. It's my firewood yard. And so we have to get that finished, cleaned up, and maybe put some grass in the front yard to get that presentable again. So more to come on the front garden. And Heidi, she's got some more.
Yeah.
We got some starts going out here in the living room.
So what I have going on is I do have some starts. If you've been following me for a while, you know that for the past couple of years I've been doing my starts actually in the greenhouse in little coolers. But since we have all the big trees, the cedar and all that would shade the living room and the big window we have there, I decided to try starts inside again this year for the first time in a while. And I don't use grow lights, I don't use added heat. I've been trying to keep experimenting with ways to try starting my tomatoes and peppers, because it is best around here if you can give them somewhat of an early start without the need of added electricity, because I keep thinking if down the road something happens or we decide to go completely off grid and totally unplug, I want to know that I have a good way of starting tomatoes and peppers without adding heat and artificial light. And so far they seem really happy in there because they're getting lots of light, and then it's plenty warm. Lots of light coming in from that south facing window without the trees in the way. All my tomatoes have come up so far. And of course the peppers, they're always behind the tomatoes. So I think they're like a week or so behind the tomatoes typically when it comes to them coming up. And anybody who's grown those knows that's how it works. And so I got that started. And then while he was doing all the tree transplanting, I've been busy cleaning up various things like pots, getting my pots ready to, because I still do a lot of stuff in pots, both inside the greenhouse and outside the greenhouse, because there's just certain things that seem to do better in pots around here. They're kind of just a smaller form of a raised bed really for me too, and plus I have pots on the deck. And now that we have light coming in here, I'm trying to talk Mr. Rain into letting me put some pots on the front deck too, because it should get plenty of sun now.
Yeah, around here, when you don't have a lot of acreage, you have to be creative in your planting techniques. So you have to really think and map out in your mind. Sometimes Heidi will do it on a piece of paper. She'll kind of map out where she wants things to go, and so you have to maximize your light penetration. Shade-friendly plants you plant down low, and you know there's a lot of different things that you think about when you have a limited space to work with.
Yep.
Again, we're on 1/3 of an acre. I got 1,200 square foot shop, 20 by 22 foot deck. The greenhouse is 16 by 12, I think 16 by 16. We got a front deck. Our house is 2,400 square feet, and then we got the chicken house. So we've got everything really kind of carefully
and that doesn't
placed.
count the parking area. We have a decent sized parking area too, which was good when I was teaching classes. But
Right. But some of what we do here is a little bit different than somebody who might have a full acre or have 5 acres or more than that. You really have to really consider your planting techniques
Right.
around sun penetration
Yep.
and different things such as that.
So, for example, like in the main garden, I try to plant all the tall stuff to the north side of the main garden bed, and then all the shorter stuff, the things not going to get so tall, towards the south side of that same bed, and then the same thing out front, and then using as much upward space as we can. So all of my peas and beans, I don't do bush beans, I don't do any kind of bush plants. If I have a climbing variety that I can go with, I'm going to do that. You know, like squash and stuff, been starting to trellis that, and I'm, you know, every year as I watch things grow and sort of experiment, then I rearrange things according to what I know doesn't need as much sun, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to be doing a few things differently out in the main garden bed and also out front than I did last year. Potatoes are one thing that a lot of people don't realize don't need as much sun as we think.
They're shade friendly.
Yeah. I've actually grown potatoes in a section one year that didn't get any direct sunlight, none whatsoever. It would only get indirect light, and I still got pretty good sized potatoes out of there. So
well, the trick
it can be done.
The trick to potatoes is loose soil, and
Yep.
you know,
And that was even in heavy soil that I did that, so that was surprising.
Yeah, but I think you would have had better yield if we'd have had, you know, a lot of straw and a lot of hay and different things like that. Horse manure works great for something like that.
Yeah,
it's mostly to
they love the horse manure.
decompose. So yeah, so we're still learning and thinking of different ways to maximize our space and utilize different methods of growing. Things like carrots and different things. I want to grow more carrots. So, you know, what we're finding out is carrots like a soil that has more sand in it. So we're going to go ahead and try some of that too.
And we did okay with our carrots last year. It was one of the better years for carrots for us. And I didn't add any sand or anything. I just did what I always do and just throwing a little bit of everything out there, leaves, and we didn't get any horse manure in the main garden last year because we were only able to get enough to do the front section. But hopefully this year we can do the full area. But
we'll be getting more of that. Yep.
So yeah, so that's one of the next things we got to do is whenever the ground is not so wet and soggy, which right now it's snowing again, so it's hard to say when this is going to happen because, you know, he can't be driving the backhoe across the yard when it's really saturated. Otherwise, it's just going to make a real big mess. But I am going to need him to bring quite a few loads of manure in. And the first load will go into the pots that I've recently cleaned out. So there's a section between our back deck, and the greenhouse that when I first started getting more serious into gardening, that was the area I used for my main garden area. It was just a small little area, but I had it filled up, and mostly what it grew was Jerusalem artichokes and peas, and it totally filled that. It looked like a little mini forest in there. Well, now that section is used for, it's where the grapes grow. Like 3 of my grape plants are on that side, and the other one's on the other side. And then I have my lettuces now. I put in the pots alongside the greenhouse. The grapes go along the deck side and the shop side, and I have to try to keep them from creeping into the greenhouse because they love to go in through the top of the greenhouse and in there. And I try
in
to
the shop.
and into the shop, yeah. And then same thing with the blackberries. So right in the middle is the blackberries in a pot, which I'm pretty sure they're not really still in the pot anymore. I'm pretty sure they're down in the ground. And there's a reason why we've been trying to prevent having too much stuff growing there that actually goes down into the ground. And maybe we'll talk about that later, but we've been trying to keep things contained. But if nothing else, the chickens really like that area to hang out. And after I did a little bit of cleaning up the pieces of grapevines and stuff that I threw out there, pruned back the blackberries because they were just like huge, taking over everything. The chickens are loving it there again because they got more room to move around, and then we let the chickens go. And you know, for now, clear up until I'm ready to start putting some transplants or seeds into the garden beds. The chickens are allowed to free range out there and clean it up and till it up and fertilize it and get all the bugs and stuff out of there. And so they've been a real blessing in that way.
Last year we had quite a bit of success knocking down some of the bug or the slug population.
Right.
And so we didn't have near the slug problem we had the year before when we didn't have the chickens free ranging all winter long in the garden. So they make great
difference.
little rototillers. They're tilling stuff up, and
yep,
we got a new little electric. I don't like electric rototillers, but we do have solar here. We play around with solar, and so a fuel-free source to rototiller as long as you got an extension cord and you keep it out of the way of the tines. But we got a new little rototiller this year. We're gonna try,
yep.
And it seems to be a pretty good aggressive little rototiller for cultivating. You know, I wouldn't really recommend it for breaking ground, but it's good for tilling up something that's already been exercised.
Yeah,
or
like in the greenhouse.
So,
and even though initially I was going to go for just a till-free garden, we're finding that there is still there's still a time and a place for tilling, and decided getting a small tiller where we can work around the smaller areas would be good. And so there are certain areas that we will be tilling, but not all. Mostly I like to stick to layering as much as possible, which is again the horse manure, the leaves, and then whatever compost. We don't have a set compost pile. We just throw banana peels, everything goes out into the garden. The chickens eat some of the stuff that we throw out there, and whatever they don't like to eat, then we'll just compost down, and then we just layer over the top of that with the horse manure before we're ready to start planting. And that works really well for us so far. So, but like he said, we're still experimenting because we don't stick with one. You know, like a lot of people like to pick, well, I'm going to do this style of gardening, I'm going to do this style of gardening. Well, I don't know what you would call our style, because I just do whatever I think's going to work for our area. And that's the thing, is back to Eden Garden might work great for a lot of people, but it doesn't work great for everyone. It all depends on your area, what kind of pest problems you may have. It just, you know, to try to put a you know, one size fits all on gardening is really kind of silly, because we all have different things that we have to fight with. Like drought typically is not a big issue with us here, though we can have some pretty dry months in the summer. But with 120 inches average rainfall, drought is typically not an issue. But having plants drowned if they get put into the ground too soon, and then those spring rains are just heavier than you thought, that's a problem, you know.
But on the same token, this ground here is, like she was saying, there's about 3 months out of the year that we do have very dry weather and no rain at all. And so we have to prepare for that kind of stuff too. This country is built for drainage, and so when it rains, the water disappears. You know, the water disappears just as fast as it came. But we do have, the ground stays moist about 9 months out of the year, and so there are 3 months out of that time frame that we do have to figure out what we're going to do for water. So we do have a backup water source for irrigation, and it really helps stave off the electric or the water bill.
Right. But yeah, I mean, you know, even though the ground, the natural ground, is built for drainage, when you're working in a garden area and you go to plant peas, for instance, we could plant snow peas around here pretty early, like right now, like, you know, middle of February or end of February, and they would grow. But what we don't know is how heavy the spring rains are going to end up being. And if they're too heavy, a lot of times the peas will just rot, and then you have to try planting them again. So I've learned to wait on the snow peas until end of March.
Same with the beans. Yeah,
and then beans would probably grow earlier because of our climate as far as temperature. But again, they will rot. I even wait longer. I wait until early May to put in beans and squash. I find, and corn. Early May for those around here. And it's all been trial and error. You know, everybody says, well, read this and read that and go by your zone. Well, to me, that means nothing. It means nothing because we each have our own little microclimates and different challenges that we're all going to face. It's going to be, you could live in the same town with the exact same climate and the same zone and everything, and someone down the street from you can do really good growing corn but terrible growing potatoes, and vice versa. It's just going to depend on the different issues you have in your own personal area. So you can't let other people tell you how you should garden. Listen to the elders, listen to the more experienced people, especially people in your area for sure. But even with that, you have to try what works best for you. And the best way you're going to find out, trial and error.
You might have a different soil type than your neighbor.
Yep.
You know, so there's a lot of things to consider. Does your soil drain a little bit faster than your neighbors? You have a little more clay in your soil.
Is it more acidic?
Rock. Exactly. So around here, you know, peas, corn, beans, any little seeds like that, they'll sprout up, but they'll sit there and they'll struggle. So if you wait until you have a little bit of sunlight and rain, when the soil can dry out a little bit, then your seeds like that will do a lot better. Right. They'll catch up and surpass anything that you might have planted a month before that. If you wait until, sometimes you gotta wait until late May and early June.
Right. And as far as tomatoes, some people around here can, even in our area, can grow tomatoes pretty good outside. Every time I try, I'll get some that do okay, but they never ripen fast enough that you know, our greenhouse space is pretty precious for growing peppers and tomatoes. And peppers, no, especially hot peppers and bell peppers, they won't grow well outside here. You have to have a greenhouse, at least for us. And so that's another reason why the peach tree really needed to come out, because I'm putting in a lot more peppers this year, trying some more new tomatoes, plus the tomatoes I grew, several of the tomatoes I grew last year. And I want to try at least one new melon, maybe put 2 melons in, and still try to have space for cucumbers as well. And so it's you know, again, everything's like working a puzzle around here and trying to make it all work. So, but it's been nice finally getting the last little stumps out there so the fruit trees can go out there. That gives me more pots and more space for doing other things back here in the back. So, okay, well, I guess that's it for our garden updates.
At least the stuff we can think about at the moment.
Right.
And for any of you who are curious, there were no buffaloes killed for the filming of this video.
Oh, he's been wearing this shirt a lot in the videos. But his son got him this shirt, and I like it on him. And it's warm.
Every time, let's do a talk video. Okay. And I'll be wearing this shirt, so.
It's not this the only shirt he has.
Maybe it's a subliminal thing. Maybe she just decides to go ahead and have me wear this, you know, grabs a hold of me when I'm wearing this shirt. I don't know. But
anyway, I like it.
No buffaloes were killed.
Buffalo plaid. Very funny, Patrick. So, all right. Well, that's it for our update for now. So we'll be doing more of these, and check out our other videos up in here, and more videos to come on the gardening.
Thanks for stopping by.
Take care.
And God bless.